wanted to know exactly what was going on up here, so last Monday we rented a van, covered up all the windows, and placed I-Team cameraman Greg Meyer inside that van with his video camera. At about 9:30 in the morning, we parked it right here, sitting just down the street from Mr. Rizzo's house. It should be noted that the van was parked on a public street in broad daylight. At no time did any of our people go on Mr. Rizzo's property. What you're looking at is what cameraman Meyer saw through the lens of the hidden I-Team camera that morning. Not much happened for about 3 hours. And then around noon, several police officers became suspicious of our vehicle. If you look closely, you can see some of them in the van's rear-view mirror. Now, in just a moment, we'll show you the unedited tape of exactly what happened when one of our I-Team members opened the truck door. But before we do, we want you to know that when the door was open, cameraman Meyer immediately handed over this official Philadelphia police press pass in order to clearly identify himself to everybody on the scene. And also remember, as you watch this, that Frank Rizzo is not a member of the Philadelphia Police Department, and this is supposed to be an official police matter. Here we go.
It's all right. Wait a minute. Let him identify himself.
That's enough.
What do you mean that's enough? We want to know who you are.
Who are you, sir?
So
All right, some identification?
Identification.
Come on out.
You ever come out holding your hands up like that, you'll get in trouble. We want to know who you are and what you're doing up here. Who is he? I thought it was somebody up here to hurt somebody.
We're up here for security, you know? Would have been a lot easier to stop and tell us you're here. We don't know. He's saying you have a dog in here,
well,
right?
You're a bunch of...
We could have shot you or something. We don't know.
Pull that, take that thing out, unhook it. Or I'll throw it out in the middle of the goddamn street. You turn that off.
It's on.
It's on. Well, it
Yeah,
won't be
it's
on
on.
long.
It's still
Won't be on long.
It's still on.
Let me tell you something. You know, I've been around a long time. And I just can't understand. It's all right. I'll pull another one. Get out of here.
Ladies and gentlemen, there's nothing wrong with your TV set. It's just that Mr. Rizzo finally broke our equipment. Last Friday, I asked Police Commissioner Morton Solomon about this incident. And Mayor Rizzo, the former mayor of Philadelphia, after our cameraman had properly identified himself and the police officer at the scene read aloud Philadelphia press pass, Mayor Rizzo, holding the press pass in one hand, reached inside this truck, which we feel he had no right to do, sir, and ripped out the cables off of our recorder and damaged the camera and the cables and the recorder. You've never heard of this before? No one has informed you of this?
No, sir.
Well, that, in fact, is what happened. And 5 members of your department, sir, stood by and not only did nothing and took orders from the mayor, who was apparently in charge of this operation, but they were smiling and laughing at the same time.
I would like you to present these facts to our internal affair, and we'll be happy to investigate it and consult with the DA about possible charges.
Yesterday, while openly videotaping on Krefeld Street, we ran into Mr. Rizzo and tried to ask him about his actions last Monday. Mayor Rizzo, Stan Borman from Channel 3 News. Could we...
How are you?
Fine, sir. How are you?
Good.
Could we talk with you for just a moment?
No, I'm busy.
You couldn't answer any of our questions?
I wouldn't talk to you under any condition.
Why is that, sir?
Forget it. Scram. Get out of here.
Sir, I understand
Now,
that
look,
these...
get away from me. I'm now a private citizen.
Yes,
you
sir.
get away from me.
We're allowed to be on the street, sir.
I don't want to talk to you. Get away from me.
How do you feel about the security guards
Look,
being taken off of you, sir?
Get away from me or I'm going to throw you out in the middle of the street.
Sir, one more question.
I'm telling you, get away from me.
You were the symbol of law and order in Philadelphia, sir, for many years. People looked up to you and respected you.
Look, creep, get out of here.
How could you justify your actions at our cameras last Monday in front of your
get
house?
out. You're a creep.
We're a member of the media. We'd like to have an answer to our question.
You're a creep.
Why did you attack our cameras, sir?
Get it all. Don't miss any of it. You're a creep. Get away from me.
Would you answer the question?
You know, you hide behind that press card.
I'm not hiding behind anything, sir.
Look,
I just wanted to get some
I'll
answers.
tell you what to do. There's a gang of yous here. There's enough of you here. By myself, I'll take yous physically.
Well, I'm not asking you to take me physically.
Well, get away from me.
Well, sir, I'm on the public street. I should be authorized to be here.
I'll break it over your head. I'll break it over your head. Get away from me, you crumb. That's a challenge, except I'll put my dog away and I'll come back. And you got 1, 2, 3. And I'll do it along with you. In that back of that fence. Just the 3 of us, 4 of us, me and you. show you what kind of a man you are. You're less than a man. Okay? You're a crumb creep. And I wouldn't take that off of nobody. And there's 3 of you and I'm by myself. And when it's over, there'll be nothing to it. Win or lose, okay? But you don't have the courage. You're a real crumb bum. Put that on camera. You're a crumb bum, the 3 of yous. And I challenge you. You're a coward. You're a yellow sneak. And if you want to, now what I say, let's forget all the rules of this great country we live in. I will go back to that wall with the 3 of yous. Just me.
Mayor Rizzo,
You're a crumb creep coward. You can't take, you won't stand up to a man.
I'm standing up. We're not here to fight. We're here to get some answers to some questions. That's all.
I want to fight you.
Why is that?
Because you're a crumb creep lush coward.
You don't even know me, Mayor.
You are a lush. I can tell by looking at you. I was a cop all my life, and I know a lush when I see one, and you're a lush. You're going to have a hell of a story on that one. Play every word of it, Crumb.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, this afternoon, Channel 3 station manager Bill Aber signed this official complaint with the police department against the officers who stood by and, as you saw, did literally nothing to restrain Mr. Rizzo from damaging our equipment. As you heard Police Commissioner Solomon say just a moment ago, any other charges will be up to him and the district attorney, Ed Rendell. One of the unfortunate aspects of all of this is that we have become the focus of this story. When it all started, we just wanted to know if your tax dollars were being properly spent for the continuing use of security guards for Mr. Rizzo. We still don't have the answer to that question. We do know, however, that 12 hours after our initial encounter with Rizzo, all police officers were pulled off the house. Commissioner Solomon insists that the timing was purely coincidental. A personal note now, if you will. When I walked over to the former mayor on the street yesterday, I was not looking for an invitation to duke it out, and I most certainly did not expect to be maligned and called a lush by Mr. Rizzo. All I wanted were some simple answers to some simple questions, and you saw what happened. By the way, we decided to play the entire interview with Mr. Rizzo unedited so we wouldn't be accused of tampering with the tape to show us in a better light or him in a less favorable light. You saw it exactly the way it went down, no more, no less. As far as Rizzo's charge that I have a drinking problem, I won't even dignify that with any answer.
Hey guys, how is everybody today? By the way, I have something I'd like for you to take a gander at. And that's Frank Rizzo. Woo! That's Frank Rizzo. Right, Chick Nose? Well, apparently you like this Frank Rizzo character. I don't like him. He doesn't have a penis or a nose. Well, you would say that, penis face, elephant. This, I'll explain later. This, to get it in motion, this shirt might be part of the prize to be the crumb of the month. I'll tell you what happened with that later. But I am so excited today. You can tell I'm in a good mood. I got Phil Elmore, who's going to be coming on pretty soon. I'll talk to you about him in a second. All right, guys, listen. It's very rare. Welcome. By the way, I do nothing until people welcome Coach. Welcome, Coach. Who's going to welcome Coach? You guys know I do nothing until someone welcomes Coach, my co-host. Can wait all day. You want me to wait? Thank you. 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 Coach, see? Don't ever say that your word. Please don't talk to me about your confidence anymore. These people love you. My co-host, Coach. Look, someone even wants to have oral sex with you. John Doe's just making at Dunkin' Donuts, when you say you want to lick Phil Elmore's taint, it brings me to my next order of business. It's rare. All right, let's shut this off. Coach is here. Everybody's here. All right. It's rare, guys, when I get excited for a guest, right? Usually it's just some knucklehead in the Dabbleverse who hates me or hates somebody else or whatever. I try to stay away from the hate. But today I got someone I'm truly a fan of. Phil Elmore is a writer. I consider him like a modern day intellectual, philosopher. The guy could have done anything, whatever he wanted to do. Guy's just he's got a brain that works. What's that like? I'm jealous of Phil. But I'm so excited that he wanted to come on. We got a lot in common. So rather than me go on and on here, because I could gush all night like a schoolgirl, I want to bring in this amazing guest. Guys, this is Phil Elmore. He's with me. Hey, Phil.
How the hell are you, man?
I'm excited. I'm excited that you're here, bud. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Phil, for the audience that isn't familiar with your work, what did you do right after high school?
I went to college.
Where'd you go to college?
In the southern tier of New York State.
Okay. And did you know what you wanted to do back then? Did you go right to your plan of study, or like most
No,
people?
actually, I went to school for accounting. An accounting degree teaches you about 3 years into a 4-year program that you don't want an accounting degree.
That's nice.
So
That's considerate.
I ended up falling into writing because my father started a technical writing company in the late 80s. And eventually I went to work for him because he wanted to expand the company and he wanted to keep it in the family. And working for my father was as bad an idea as I thought it was. It's very hard to work for a family. And then I did that trained me to be a technical writer, and I did that for years. And then in what was life's final joke on me, my father decided he wanted to retire. I ended up unemployed at coincidentally the same time. I applied for his job and I got it. So for 3 months, I sat at a desk next to my own father while he trained me to do his job. I have never wanted a guy to climb into a truck and drive to Alabama more than I wanted it the day he finally did.
Wow, man. That is that is life just kind of like showing you, hey, you're not in charge.
Weird situation. I think the company was like, well, we liked the first one. Get us another one that looks just like him.
Wow.
So
how long
they
did you
did.
take that, Phil?
I was at that company for years. I still write. I still do technical writing. I do software documentation. I write fiction and nonfiction. I do internet marketing. For years, I worked for an internet marketer that worked in the survival and self-defense space. So I've spent, it's got to be hundreds of hours interviewing experts in those fields. And so today I've been focusing on putting out my own books and also working for freelance clients, and just, basically I spend all my time in this room. My life is a series of desks. If it's not this desk, it's the desk next to it. And all I do is write. So I type insanely fast as a result. It's one of the few things that I took in high school that ever helped me was learning to type. So there's irony there.
Yeah, well, T.S. Eliot said that his life turned out to be separating the segments of oranges and drinking his coffee. That means anything. For some reason, that when you were speaking, that image came to mind.
Well, I remember once in college, I took some stupid seminar and we talked about the author Raymond Carver, and I had to write an essay about Raymond Carver. And my English professor didn't like my essay because I called it something like Raymond Carver, alcohol, misery, more alcohol. And I didn't get it as a 20-year-old kid. Yeah, as a 20-year-old kid, I didn't get it. Now, as a man in his 50s, I do get it. Now I can relate to Raymond Carver.
Isn't that funny, dude?
Because
I was just gonna say, isn't it funny, like how
Oh,
as we
bit of
get
a
older,
delay there.
now, yeah, we got a little StreamYard thing going on, but as we get older, Phil, it's kind of like the stuff that we used to say, no, this doesn't apply to me, and then all of a sudden, like, oh, now I get it, Jesus.
Yeah. So, well, I've learned a lot about myself in the last week as I made appearances on all these shows in the Dabbleverse. I learned what a terrible person I truly am and how completely lacking in talent I am. So that's been fun.
No, you can't sell that to me, my friend, because I think the opposite.
Well, I, I'm cheating too because this isn't my first rodeo when it comes to internet people throwing shade my way. Is that what people say anymore? I feel like such an old man now.
No,
How do you do, fellow kids? Because for years, when I wrote in the martial arts space, back in the days when everyone had a bulletin board and a forum online, about the time I was listening to Howard Stern, honestly, that during that time there were all kinds of people on the internet who were happy to tell me how much they hated me. So now that's I'm an old hand at that sort of thing.
yeah, that hasn't changed. I mean, you could be, Mother Teresa, or anybody. They they will hate on anybody, and I like to say you got to have the thick skin, but you really don't. As long as people are telling the truth, we all know our shortcomings. We all know what's wrong with us. I think, except if you're someone like John who doesn't think there's anything wrong with them. But what we know, we're not perfect, and
Well, John is he's those people from the first round of American Idol when American Idol was first popular.
good, yeah.
Those people they weren't just convinced they could sing. When told that they couldn't, they were very, very angry.
Right.
And they became hostile
How dare you?
because these people who do entertainment for a living, they couldn't possibly know that I'm not good at this thing that I think I'm good at. And God bless them. Some of them even managed to turn that into a brief career, like that William Hung guy.
Oh yeah. The Gundam style guy.
No, that's Psy. Gangnam Style is a Korean dude named Psy.
Well, they both suck, in my opinion.
No, William Hung was Chi Bang, I think was the name of the song he did. And he was briefly popular. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, yeah, they're equally as bad, and they're as equally as offensive to the
I,
audience. But I wish them luck.
I'll be honest. I'm a fan of Psy. I like Gangnam Style. I always have. I'm a bad person.
I wouldn't take
I'm
that,
okay with that.
but you got an open mind, all right, and that's one thing I think that makes you so likable to the audience. You have a definite opinion. You have facts to back up your opinion. But if someone said something to you that would be a counterpoint, you wouldn't say, "Oh, bullshit, shut up." You would actually consider it, think about it, and then give us your honest opinion. You come across very likable and very able to be spoken to and to have a conversation with. Anybody ever say that to you?
No, but I have been told I'm very boring.
These people that are negative, you got to get them. You got to get them out. They ain't. They don't know what's up.
Well, I'm not actually worried about it. It's just, you know, y- I think in all criticism, there's probably a learning opportunity there. There's probably a way to be better, improve, do something. I mean, it's weird because I didn't set out to do this specifically. I don't make money off of doing stuff on YouTube. This is a hobby. I do it to force myself to do something fun. I make money anytime I'm not doing this is when I make money. So
Yeah, Phil, is there anything that you've experienced that really does get to you that makes you that is a chink to your self-esteem, to your self-confidence? Has that
yeah,
ever happened?
no, back in my early 20s when I first started writing martial arts articles and people first started throwing hate my way on the internet. I mean, I had entire internet forums devoted to not liking me. And I remember Coach Scott Sonnen, who does still does martial arts and coaching and athletic stuff today. I think he started out in like the Russian martial arts space and has since gone on to do lots of like physical training type stuff.
No relation
And
to the one and only the most entertaining person on the internet, Chael Sonnen.
no relation.
Okay.
And Scott once told me, this was early in my career, he said, you're going to have to grow a thick skin if you want to play with the grownups. And I think about that even to this day, because it was very wise. So back in my early 20s, I would engage in these back and forth online battles with people, and it's very silly because it's wars of essays. I'm going to write an article now that excoriates you publicly. And then they write posts about me. And then I write another article excoriating them further. And, so back then I would have done that. These days I don't, because, having seen it and got it out of my system, I was a young man. Then, I look in the mirror now and I genuinely see my father and I'm like, yeah, I'm too old for that. I genuinely don't let it bother me. And when people are talking about me, I now have enough experience to know that helps me. It only drives traffic. So if I was doing a search for something unrelated and I found, what is it? The Obnoxious Bastards podcast, something like that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why is this popping up? So I tried searching on my name specifically and it popped up again. And I looked and they actually mentioned my appearance on WATP and they weren't kind.
Oh, they were mean?
But at the same time, I'm like, that's so cool. Somebody sent me you can't call it a tweet anymore. Somebody on X told me, Chad Zumach's talking about you. So I tune in and sure enough, he's basically like, who is this fat asshole? He's so boring. and I actually reached out to Chad on X and thanked him, because that only, when everybody this week, everyone was simultaneously saying, who the hell is this guy? And that does nothing but help me. So how do you resent it? Like it takes, you have to have a certain amount of maturity. You have to have a certain amount of self-confidence to go, that's literally just helping me. So you're not lying awake at night going, someone on the internet has been wrong to me, which I'm certain is what people like John do, is make that enemies list. I've mentioned on a few of the podcasts that I appeared on, I like to tune in for the beginning of his streams for the running of the grievances. It's like the running of the bulls in Pamplona. It's where he lets us know all the people he hates today and why. Yeah. And that's interesting to me. So.
Yeah. And Phil, you brought us some great points, and I might show you, man, feeding this to you would be like putting these bullets of information I have from texts from John. They are such softballs. I'll put them in the pitching machine, and the thing is going to go 30 miles an hour to Sammy Sosa. If I were to read them to you, because the immaturity, the hurt ego, the threats, the entitlement. Bill, you ever seen a character like John? And this is, I guarantee, I've known him for a long time. He's not putting this on. This is who the guy is. All right. This is not embellished. He is the guy that you see.
I think it's really easy to go, this guy is super unlikable. And someone like Husey has said flat out that he hates him. And it's easy to fall into that because he does so many things that are obnoxious and unlikable. But I think it's worthwhile to understand people as people. This is a guy who desperately wants to be loved. And I'm not making a joke. I'm not saying it like, oh, he needs a hug. It's not like that.
I understand.
He wants to be adored. He wants to be worshipped as a celebrity and as a person of accomplishment. And that is why all you have to do is poke him once and he'll list off his IMDb credits because he's got them all memorized. I was in a show that nobody's ever heard of and nobody's ever seen where we arm wrestled.
Were you in it?
Yeah. Yeah, were you dues payer? And then every 5 seconds he invokes Shuli Egar, and it's like, do you wake up in the morning thinking about this guy? It's not healthy. And the reason he's so obsessed with Shuli and to a lesser extent Carl is because these guys criticize him a lot. And for John, the greatest sin in his universe is to make fun of him. He can't handle being made fun of. He can't even disengage from it. That there's like this life cycle of getting okay with people making fun of you on the internet. I should know. And early on in that life cycle, first you battle them and you're like, I will write back to everyone. And then
You were
sometimes
20, Phil. You were 20.
yes, sometimes those wars get nasty. But as you progress, eventually you learn, okay, I'm just not going to read it. I'm just not going to dip my head in that bucket of negativity. I'm just going to not let it enter my head. And then the further you go along that path, eventually it stops bothering you and you start seeing it as the opportunity that it is. And when you interact with people who are making fun of you in a way that is not defensive, even in a way that is friendly, they absolutely have no idea what to do with that.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things used to be to find people talking about one of my books on Twitter and just jump into the conversation and not be upset that they were making fun. I've done this on Facebook too, and they never have it like, oh, okay. Because I think most people expect you to be angry or to lash out or be defensive. And
Right.
there's no point. There's no point in doing it if you're secure in who you are and why you're doing what you're doing. So, it'd be easy to draw negative conclusions from John's behavior and cite deficits in his character. But the fact is the guy wants to be adored and he's upset when that's denied him. And I think that comes down to a lifetime that he's largely spent failing upward and then squandering those opportunities. And now he's a man who spends all his free time in a bar because he literally has no friends. And, that's pitiable.
Yeah, it is. It is sad. You can't help but see someone who's struggling, and when you start feeling bad for them and want to try and lift them up any way you can, then they come at you and try and ruin anything that you have. They
Well,
make fun
that's
of
just
you.
it. The second you start to feel sorry for someone like John, he does something that makes you go, "Oh, fine, you've earned every bit of it."
Yeah,
And
Phil,
that's why,
you're right. It's like, how do you help someone who, when you're about to lend the hand, they take it and they throw shit at it and put it into a wood chopper.
yeah, he's exactly the sort of person who will accept your help and then turn around and make fun of you or insult you. He's a big one for insulting people. And I watched a little bit of the stream where he interviewed the guys from whatever metal band it was that he was talking to. I forget the name of the band. And
Was
he
it
was
White
being
Lion?
like Zebra or something like
Okay,
that.
okay. Yeah. I know you talk about like an
It wasn't a
older
band I was familiar with, but he was being incredibly insulting, and they were hitting him
Oh, well,
back
that was
worse than he
beneath
was
him,
giving.
Phil.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
So,
I mean to cut you off, please. I mean, your thought
oh
on
no,
it.
I just
He was being
that's his
condescending.
personality. His personality is being insulting, uh, and we both know there are people like that. There's in the Dabbleverse especially, there are people who will insult you and expect you to be fine with it. And I probably fall into that category because I understand what's happening. So, when Vince reaches out and says, "Hey, come on my show," and also then takes shots at me, it's like, okay, that's Vince being Vince. And I think a lot of people in the Dabbleverse universe take little shots at each other and don't expect anything to come of it. And then sooner or later, someone will just break and cross over. And then suddenly Patrick Melton has a problem with Shuli when he didn't before, and is probably frustrated because he's never known the touch of a woman. I'm sorry, that's a recycled joke. I used that before, so it's unfair to
It's
draw
okay.
even a secondhand laugh from that.
No, I get.
So that I think, and then there's people who you make fun of them, and it's war, but then there's this weird willingness to forgive because they don't really want to be fighting. So you get all these people circling each other like John and DG and Joey C and people who are really. It's very easy to set them off, but also very easy to unset them off if you just apologize. Although
Mhm.
John is the toughest nut to crack there because I once watched DG apologize to him harder than any human being has ever apologized to anybody because it's not possible to agree with John hard enough to stay in his good graces. Like DG was agreeing with him and John thought he wasn't because John is not as smart as DG. And DG's like, no. I'm telling you, I agree with you. And it just was not sustainable.
Phil, I mean, all your points are so right on, man. And it's like, hey, you know, eh, if you go to the basis of this, we're supposed to have people watching our shows because they're entertaining, informational, or goofy, and comics, will make fun of people, but none of it is mean, and nobody wants to affect anyone's life other than that saying, good old fashioned ribbing. But
Well, I would say that's not always the case.
okay,
People love drama.
yeah,
Specifically, people love drama in which they are not active participants. So
okay,
even the audience members who say, "Oh, why are you guys fighting?" and you're a bunch of old men playing grade school games, they're still tuning in and watching it because the drama is fascinating. But certain people get angry and then they want payback. And I'm just as I can fall prey to this just as easily as anybody else. It made me really mad when John started targeting Shuli's sponsors and then crowing about
that's
successfully getting a sponsor to drop him. And I'm like, well, let's see how you like it. Because in my opinion, the only way to stop somebody from doing that is to show them that that type of procedural warfare is double-edged.
if
And
they don't
people,
have the ability, Phil, if they don't have the ability to put themselves in someone else's shoe, to say, "Hey, I wouldn't like the way that feels." Sometimes those people might need to feel what they're doing to other people, and it's kind of
right.
tough to
And
do, but I think that sometimes that needs to happen.
well, and he crossed a line recently where he started stealing other people's intellectual property to make merchandise that makes fun of Shuli. It's like you're allowed to make fun of him. You're allowed to make merchandise that makes fun of him. But when
Mhm.
you steal somebody else's logo and put it on your stuff,
Yeah.
you've now crossed a line, and that's actionable. And yeah, is it a big deal? No, nobody's going to live or die
But
because John
it
had some
shows your
impact to make.
creativity, though. If you can't make fun of somebody without using something that they created, you probably shouldn't be putting something like that out there.
I get what he's trying to do because he alluded to this on one of his streams. He and his, I think he said it was his nephew, some relative, have been war gaming. They've sat down and had a council of war about what they can do to get the dues payer and
Oh,
destroy the Shuli network.
unbelievable.
And one of those things was clearly the merchandise, and he was very excited about this. Because fundamentally, he's tried to roast back the people that make fun of him. He's tried to do that, and he's just not that talented at it.
Right.
Because even if you don't like what Carl does, even if you don't like what Shuli does, the fact is they're very entertaining and they're very good at it.
Talented.
And yeah, it took him a while to find the formula.
Mhm.
I went back and I started watching the old Uncle Rico shows, starting with episode 1, and especially the episodes that are just Shuli talking into the camera. The kernel of the show is there, but it's not like the current formula they have, which is very entertaining.
Yeah.
And I didn't sit down, look at the scorecard and go, okay, which side am I going to take? I stumbled into this and I found one side much more entertaining, and Stuttering John is almost unwatchable by himself.
Mm.
So plus, you combine that with the fact that he can be very obnoxious, and you're like, yeah, I kind of want to see them win. And it's not something that anything really does win, because it's John who thinks of it in terms of I win all the time. I'm winning. Nobody's really winning. If everyone's making money at the end of the day, then I guess you'd call that a win. And everybody's, some of these people are making an actual living. It's easy for me to sit here not worrying about making a dollar and go, that doesn't matter
It's
what
a
happens in
hobby.
terms
It's a
of money.
hobby for you, Phil.
Right. But now that, used to be nobody listened to my videos, and I got used to that. And when suddenly people started watching them, it was actually a little bit intimidating. I'm like, wait, now what I say actually matters. Before, when I'm
Really?
talking to 5 people, all I had to do was make those 5 people happy.
So that was in
So,
your head. So that
right. And
did it
I
change
found
the way you
myself thinking
broadcast?
the other day, I'm like, if I reach the threshold for monetization, I could get super chats if I did a live broadcast. And I started to see dollar signs when I hadn't even been thinking it in those terms before.
Why not
So
get paid
I
for your hobby,
understand.
Phil? Why not?
Yeah, I understand how that, messes with people. I understand how it prods them to do things they might not otherwise. Like, now I can never stop doing videos about Stuttering John. Because while I found it interesting and I wanted to do some videos, now that people have subscribed specifically for that purpose, I can never stop, because they will lose interest. So,
Well, yeah.
and Carl said to me, yeah, I know, right? He's like, I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of, everything is double-edged about it.
Yeah. Everybody, please, because this is gonna replay, and there'll be many people that are gonna watch this. Guys, let's get Phil up to the point where, we want him up there. We want him to do more videos, so let's get this man monetized. All right. So what we got to do is we gotta subscribe to him. We gotta like him, and the main thing is just becoming a subscriber, because he needs a certain amount, and watch the whole thing. Even if you're going to bed or whatever, leave it on. Let's get him some time. Let's get this man, because I'm a huge fan and I want to see more from Phil.
Well, thank you very much.
No problem. You'll be there. I can see you doing this in a week, buddy. Where it takes people years to do it sometimes, but you got
I'm
a real talent for this, buddy.
I'm intensely curious. What were the circumstances under which you left the Howard Stern show, and what have you been doing since?
Okay. Um, well, I got fired for uh, depression, substance abuse, alcohol.
Oh, I had no idea.
Yeah, that's why I got fired. They gave me a second chance,
I'm
but I
sorry, I wasn't like trying to bring up a painful
no,
memory. Like,
it's okay.
I didn't know the answer.
Yeah, and I don't want to bore anybody, but I'll just say they gave me a second chance, and I had to go to meetings and stuff like that, and blah blah blah. And I decided to do stand up comedy in Boston sober for the first time. Miss Howard Stern was there, Levy was there. Let's just say I had one of these AA meetings to go to on Monday. I didn't show up until Wednesday, and they found out that I didn't go. So Tom called me up on the phone, and he said, "We gave you a second chance, so we can't do anything else. So
Hmm.
you're fired." So yeah. So then I moved to California and went to a rehab out there, and um, that would be one of the 7 or 8. But that's boring stuff. I got a great guy on here, so let me get into you. But I didn't want to be rude and not answer your question. So
Well,
that
I'm not trying to ask questions you wouldn't want to answer. I was
no,
curious
buddy, not
because
at all. No,
I
I was just
remember you being on the show. Like I said, I was a fan back in the day. I think I bought Howard's first book when it came out in hardcover, and I bought it at a media play, which they even have those anymore.
I don't think so, but yeah, I came a couple years I came at 98, so he already did his two books. But I heard that there would be people. He would do a signing out in the city. There would be people like streets to get a sign. Uh, I wonder if that was his crux. I wonder if that was the pinnacle of his popularity. Maybe it was.
Well, I mean, I think when he went to satellite, he disappeared from most people. He went from being one of the most visible people in the media to being non-existent for the vast majority of people who didn't have satellite.
Do you
So
think it
while
was
he personally made money, it wasn't until he started doing television. He was a judge on one of those talent shows. I forget which
America's
one.
Got Talent? Yeah.
Yeah, and that was a big pivot point. That was the mainstreaming of Howard Stern, sort of the rehabbing of the former shock jock, if I
That's
can
when
use those
that's when
obnoxious air quotes.
he lost
Yeah,
me
and
and you, the people that wanted him, the blue collar
right,
people.
because once he got a taste of mainstream approval, he went full speed in the other direction.
It's
And
what he
now that
wanted.
he's hanging out with Jennifer Aniston and John Hamm and folks like that, he's full, left wing woke Howard now, to the point where he's even talking about that.
You mean
So
want him?
to me, it's a shame, because I think he was this great hero of the working man. You watch his movie and it paints him as that, and this fighter for free speech, but really, a fighter for boobs on the radio. And it was endearing in an underdog sort of way. And there's nothing endearing about a rich elitist who looks down his nose at the riffraff,
Yeah.
and that's who he's become.
Yeah. My favorite show on the internet is a program called Radio Gunk. I don't know if you've ever heard it.
I have heard of Radio Gunk. I've heard bits and pieces of interviews that John did with Monique from Radio Gunk, and that's really the extent of my knowledge of her and her program. It's my understanding that she's extremely obsessed with Howard Stern and knows what's going on with him inside and out.
They were super fans. All of them were super fans But I find it so interesting because you got people that love this man so much, and they know everything about every appearance, who was on, and they love the guy, kind of like, I would assume me and you did, going in and having him on through a commute, like so many other people. And the show that we loved is, as far as I know, and the clips that I've heard, is not the show that we fell in love with, and that's what their show is about. Now
Mm.
they go balls deep in this film. They warts and all, and it's fun to see people that were such fans go into having no respect for this person. And I never badmouth Howard. He gave me my first job, and he was always kind to me. So they hate me. That's why they don't have me as a guest. And
Mm.
I worship from afar. I I'm friends with all of them, and they're all great people. But they really do a job, Phil. And if you want to see a master class in um, in I would call it reverse opinion, you got to watch their show. They're really good. I think you would enjoy it.
Well, the last thing I need is one more show to watch. I've already developed a drinking problem. I've poured my Gatorade all over myself. So
Oh no. Hey Phil, let me ask you a question, man. If the great Anthony Cumia, who's so funny, he said it once, and I thought it was brilliant. He said, if the whole Stuttering John character was, as they say, a work, this comes from professional wrestling. If it was a work, and this was a character that John was doing, could you, in any universe, think that that has any validity to it?
meaning, would I think it's believable or
No, I'm saying is, do you think at any point that he's putting some of this on, or are we
no?
getting
No, I
John who he is?
excuse me. I don't think there's any chance that anyone could be that. I mean, he would genuinely be a 160 IQ genius if
Right,
this was all a put on. If he was
right.
living
Wouldn't he be
this,
amazing?
like I don't for a second think that is. I think
Okay,
the simplest explanation is usually the correct one, and I
yeah.
think in this case, John is just being who he is.
None of it's a
Um,
character, you're saying?
no, I think that's genuinely, and it's a very consistent presentation. Everyone who has experienced John has the same story to tell.
Right.
That he's the same sort of manipulative user of people. He is overbearing, and on those rare occasions when you see John interacting with people in a friendly way, people he doesn't have reason to be angry at, in the absence of anyone else to make him angry or wind him up, there are a few moments where he's almost kind of normal, but
Mhm.
he's so desperate to be the center of attention that usually overrides whatever else is going on. So
Right on.
there's some footage of, like you mentioned, Cumia. There some of the shows he did
Oh
in, I
god,
guess
those are
it's
the best.
Anthony Cumia's studio. They're trying to work with him. They're trying to treat him like one of the gang, but you can tell there's this undercurrent of "you asshole" that just pours out of them after a while because he's just not capable of engaging with someone on a normal guy level.
Phil, I'm sorry,
And
I'm used to Tonight Show, okay? He actually said that, man. He's like, how do you, okay, to think it, you're an asshole, but to come out and say it, I'm used to the Tonight Show.
Well, when he starts shouting, "I'm more famous than you," it's just that's a "don't you know who I am?" only
Right,
worse. It's
right.
it's to do it unironically. There are people who will point out that, like, when he's home and someone knocks on the door and he's just shouting from his couch, "Come in, it's open, open the door. I didn't order that food. Tell the cops that they ordered that food
Yeah.
to troll me." And it's like, okay, that's like something that would happen in an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm or something
Mhm.
like that. But it really points to truth is stranger than fiction, I think is the saying, and the reality of John is, if you wrote this character as I think as Carl has said, and maybe Anthony has said it, you write this character, no one believes you, and they tell you got to tone this down. That's not a believable character, because he's Kramer and then some. It's just so weird.
You wouldn't believe it if someone said,
yeah,
"I got this character. I'm going to pitch this character." There's no way that anyone would believe that that's a
yeah.
real thing.
The really illuminating thing about going back and watching old episodes of Uncle Rico and some of Carl's old episodes is that John's story, his tune hasn't changed in the last 3 years. You go back years, he's threatening to sue everybody. He's talking about sending out cease and desist letters. He's talking about how he should be allowed to attack everybody he wants, but no one is allowed to come after him or else. And Obama made the R word illegal, so you're not allowed to say that. And, it's the same 5-6 things, which John does this thing where whenever he knows 2 or 3 things about you, he just repeats those things every time your name comes up. And we on the Uncle Rico show, we had it distilled down to the cast. Shuli is backpack, Bob Levy is old, and Mike Morse is silent. So it was like backpack, old, silent, backpack, old, silent, almost like a Tourette's list of phrases and words that repeat. So these tics, which I don't know, maybe they're his OCD, which he's always talking about. I think John tends to lean on all of the disabilities and ailments he supposedly has. I think he uses those as a crutch when it's convenient so that you're not allowed to pick on him.
Mm-hmm.
But then when he wants to forget that they exist, it's I'm the greatest, most intelligent, most amusing, most entertaining person in the world.
and he believes it, Phil. I'm telling you, because I worked with a guy and I know him, and he likes to tell everyone how much of a writer he was, and he had a computer screen because he was a call screener. That's what he did. And the interns would answer the phone calls from New York, and they would say, "Hey, John, I got a guy that says he had sex with his girlfriend's sister or something like that." And John, to his credit, would say, "Yes, I want to take that," or "No, I tell him to call." That was the blow off. Call 1-800-44-STERN. And he would put up at times. He would put up at the first thing a thought or a joke or something like that. And there were times where he had written something, Phil, and he would write it so it would be up there, and Howard would read the joke. And this one particular time, Howard read one of his jokes that he wrote, and everyone in the office started laughing. His hands go up. I wrote that. I wrote that. If that doesn't show you everything that you need to know about this person, guy doing something as easy as just as writing a line, a professional who is a writer would say, "Okay, all right, I got that. That's good. That people like that one." But he had to announce, and he needs the attention. He needs the accolades. That is how this man lives his life. Because
I don't
think, Phil, Howard has said many times, "Why is John writing me stuff on my computer? I want to know what line they're on, and I want to know what they want to talk about."
I don't begrudge him the desire to write and get credit for his writing. As a writer, I can tell you that we are the most obnoxious people in the world. Writers all hate each other. They're all convinced that their success, other people's success, comes at their expense. If there's not enough success to go around, and if another writer is successful, he's somehow robbing me of the opportunity to be successful. Deep down, that's how writers are. And they want credit for their work, and they want to be recognized for what they've done. So I can understand the impulse. I don't know if we characterize John as a writer, even though he clearly thinks he is one. I don't know if I would give him that credit. But the fact is, I understand the impulse because, every writer, I used to write magazine articles, and one of the clients that I would write magazine articles for, he wanted to make sure his name was out there in the trade space for survival and self-defense. and I would write articles and then request that his name be put on them. And they never had any idea what I was talking about. They were very confused because no writer in the history of ever has ever said, not that I want to use a pen name, but I want a different actual human being to take credit for my work. They were very confused by that request. And I understood why they were confused by that request. I'm like, no, you don't understand. I'm being paid twice. I'm being paid by you and I'm being paid by him. Please just put his name on it. So,
Hey, I was going to ask you, Phil, why did Charles Bukowski say nothing dies as hard or as long as a writer?
I think it has something to do with the fact that writers, they live in their own head all the time, and that is not a healthy way to be. I looked up a bunch of famous writer quotes for a book I was doing, and for some reason I needed those quotes. I don't even remember why, but I remember thinking all of these quotes are really depressing. And all of the greatest writers in the world ended up penniless and drunken and miserable. Hemingway went bankrupt. I believe it was Hemingway who said that bankruptcy happens gradually, then suddenly, and then shotgun apparently, because he took his own life.
And Phil, I got to ask you about Hemingway. Is it the true story that he threw money into a pool in Florida and was yelling at a girl and said, "Here, take my last couple cents," and the dents are still in that pool? Is that a true story?
I don't actually know. I've never heard that story. I've read a lot of Hemingway stuff because I took a class on him in college, and Hemingway, if I remember correctly, when he was at like the peak of his writing career, would drink all morning while he wrote and then stop writing about midday when he was too drunk to keep writing. And then he would just keep drinking. So there's a lot of alcohol in his work for that reason.
Okay. I'm sorry to interrupt you on that one, but you brought someone. Actually, we were talking about it. Someone actually asked what I thought about Hemingway, and I was at the pool in Florida when my grandparents lived in this place, and they told me that it was an urban legend that the dents at the bottom of the pool was when he came home drunk and before he died. It was an urban legend. These things never are true. I thought maybe you might know, so I had to interrupt. Sorry.
That one I'd never heard before, but I mean, there's so much. The guy had an amazing life. I think there was like a TV miniseries about his real life, and I want to say that it starred Stacy Keach, and that was a number of years ago. It was like a TV miniseries of 2 nights worth of movie, but the guy led an adventurous, interesting life.
Yeah. Hey, Bruce, FST, and I'm going to get to you guys in a second here. But Bruce goes, have you seen Phil hit the heavy bag? He's no joke. He's got skills. Bruce, is Bruce on point here or what?
I think he's being kind. I've been like a traditional martial artist for a lot of years. I'm very slow. So on those rare occasions when I actually manage to make contact with the enemy, there's a lot of momentum behind me hitting someone. So that person who was that slow not to get out of the way is in big trouble. That's, something I've done for a number of years.
Yeah, and tell me if I'm going over time here. I don't want you to.
No, I'm good.
All right. Let me go to the audience here, and let me do some questions, and I want to come back. I want to talk about your MMA career because that's something that we have.
Well, it's not. I've never done mixed martial arts. That's not me. I'm a traditional martial arts guy. It's the martial art that I got my instructor level credentials in is an Indonesian system that's Silat and Kun Tao are the
Muay Thai or what?
No, it's from Indonesia. It's how do I describe it? It's sort of a
fighting or.
Yeah, it's stand-up fighting. It's not grappling. There is like joint locking and wrist locking and things like that in the system, but it's primarily a stand-up fighting system. It's not a grappling system.
Is this elbows, knees?
To some extent, yeah. There's lots of like plucking and gouging and pulling pieces off the guy and trying to put his eyes out, and it's a mean-spirited system. It's done from very close range. And there's a lot of ripping and gouging, and it's just it's the perfect art if you're in a really bad mood. You're just like, I just want him to hurt.
That's awesome, man. Well, all right. So you piqued my interest. I've never heard of that. I thought heard everything, but
It's
I haven't heard of
pretty
that.
obscure. I mean, Silat and Kuntao are not unheard of, but they are not nearly as known as most other martial
Right,
arts.
right. Do you do? Uh, this is. I was just going to ask a question that next time I go out and someone who knows something about karate is just going to say, "Hey, are you going to laugh at this?" Do you laugh at the not laugh? That's the bad choice of words. Do you put karate kind of on the bottom as a mixed martial art? As far as a combat sport, do you put
Oh
karate?
no, not at all. I took karate in college. It's the first martial art I ever did. It was the martial art that taught me that even I, as slow and out of shape as I was and am, could, it's not gotten any better over the years, but even I could do martial arts and move forward in them. So I have a lot of love for karate. And
Let's just
I
do
I have a
karate.
friend.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I have a friend who does hard contact sparring in karate, where they glove up and are actually wailing on each other pretty hard, and it can be a very effective martial art. It's just like with most martial arts, it's all on how you train it.
Yeah.
So,
Is karate a good way to start to learn how to punch and maybe throw a couple kicks?
well, it depends on, like, it'll teach you how to punch like a karate person punches. Whether or not that's a good thing depends on whether or not you prefer to punch that way. Like I prefer vertical punching, because I did several years in Wing Chun before I moved on to the system that I eventually got my credentials in. And so I like vertical punching as opposed to horizontal punching.
Okay.
Um, and like, I don't know if you've ever seen any of the Yip Man movies, but he does these vertical reciprocating chain punches and makes them look really cool. And there's a lot of that in Wing Chun, and that's usually what vertical punches are used for. Whereas, in karate, they're doing horizontal punches, and there's a lot of reciprocating of the arms as you're using the twisting of your torso to generate power. And that's sort of adjacent to how boxing is done, but it's not how boxing is done.
Uh-huh.
So there's lots of different ways to do it. No one in your life is going to be harmed by learning karate.
Right. Right.
It's certainly not a bad thing.
Yeah. And I didn't want it to come across the way, but is
No, no.
Kempo the king of that area of combat?
No, I mean, it's just another system that has a lot of similarities and some differences. Kempo has a lot of fun names for things. All of their moves have, like, and this is obliterating hammers, and this is
Yeah,
scything death knives. I don't know what they actually are because I'm not a
I know what
Kempo
you mean.
guy,
Okay.
but they have a lot of fun names for things. Elvis was so obsessed with Kempo that he would just start doing karate kicks on stage, because and the funny thing is, we've all met that guy
Yeah,
who's
yeah,
so
yeah.
into martial arts that he can't help but do it whenever he's moving. I was at a goth rave club one time, and I know you're like, him, but I was, and there was a guy karate dancing on the dance floor, and I'm like, that's that
Well,
guy.
come on, man. He
We've
was
all met
Freaky
that
Friday.
guy.
Everyone knows that. There's a song written about it, Phil. Come on, man. Wake up, buddy.
True.
But there's a goth guy doing karate.
He was a guy at a goth club. He wasn't dressed like a goth. He was just some
Uh,
guy.
Funny, man. All right, so we got a lot to talk about. Let's talk to some of your fans out here first. You got Brock Lee. Brock Lee, give this to Coach. Thank you, Brock Lee. That's very nice of you. And Coach, did you hear that? We're gonna get you. We'll get you a new blouse or something. Carissa, you and Phil are great guys. Great guest, Casey. Thank you. I knew he'd be great.
She's
Phil,
awfully nice. She's said a lot of
you know
nice things the
Carissa?
last few days.
Yeah, you're becoming a big thing here in this
Eh,
verse.
I'm coincidentally on a bunch of shows that the same people watch. I think there's a difference there. Like I did Chris Abel's show Replayables on Friday, and everyone was like, "Wow, that guy really drinks." I'm like, "Writer." Like, this is just Friday for me.
Right. Yeah,
But
this is the first time that he's done this. He's been training.
yeah,
To
that's
do
right. I've been training my whole
Right.
life for this moment. But I saw, the same names in the chat that I've been seeing all week long, because there's just this dedicated fan base that
Yeah.
is awfully nice and has been awfully nice.
Totally. Yeah, I found this is my 4th month doing this, Phil, and I've met some amazing people. Um, and there's only a couple, you can count them on one hand, that are really mean and do things that, you know, you just don't do to other people.
I
If you have any compassion for other human beings.
I don't know as I have any room to talk because there's people that have been telling me you're trying to ruin Stuttering John's life and you're such a jerk, and
With an opinion? Oh, that must be is that like a, some kind of, like Spock, Star Trek thing where you can ruin someone with, some, distance Reiki or something?
well, I guess it all comes down to how we look at criticism. I mean, from John's perspective, and he said this in as many words, I get beat up all the time. It's easy for you to talk when you're not the one getting beat up every single day. And I am not unsympathetic to the fact that from his perspective, there's a section of the internet that is devoted to mocking every single thing he says and does. I'm not unsympathetic to that.
Mm.
But I might point out maybe stop being so mockable. I don't know. Maybe engage in some personal hygiene. Now, granted, I'm the guy that just spilled a cup of Gatorade all over the front of his shirt on live internet.
Oh,
But
it's okay. Uh, but Phil, maybe it's a time, and this is probably a very important piece that we can get into after we talk about your fans. Is that maybe this is a sign that you're not as terrific and creative and perfect as you think you are. I mean, maybe some people are just pointing out some things that you don't see in yourself, and you might not be perfect because none of us are. Is that the
well,
problem?
I know I'm not perfect.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about like John, like maybe he's
Yeah,
not as brilliant as he thinks he is.
it's very easy to say whenever anyone does anything unlikable, well, he's got a personality disorder. Like lots of people, you won't go broke betting on the ability of people to say that their exes have like borderline personality disorder, because there are personality disorders that seem to just be very organized ways of referring to the similarities when people are being dicks.
Mm.
So, I'm not sure that every person who is a dick has a personality disorder per se.
Good
At the
point.
same time, though, some of the things he does do seem a little driven by this inner repetition that isn't quite normal. Like there doesn't seem to be any learning from the feedback. Most of us, when we get negative feedback, will tend to learn from it, even if it takes us a while.
Yeah.
John not only isn't changing, but if you look at video of him from before he took an 8-month break and after, he's visibly declining. He's got like a Joe Biden thing going on, where if you look at video of Biden from just 5 years ago, the
Yeah.
way he speaks sounds markedly different than the way he speaks now.
Yeah.
And the way John talks and how his ability to put together sentences, very different now as opposed to just a year ago.
Yeah.
And I've noticed this because I've been watching some of the older shows where they're playing older clips of him,
Mhm.
and it's a little disturbing. It's a little remarkable just what's going on there.
Yeah.
What's the cause? I don't pretend to know. I know that every time you turn around, the guy's talking about all the medications he's on when he's not saying he wants to get into a boxing ring and box 50 people at once. Like the second somebody punches him in the head, it's going to kill him.
And that's what I thought, Phil. I wanted to bring this up, and I wanted to ask you about it. Um, John is someone who has threatened me physically. This is probably a day after he says he loves me, and he's one of my closest friends, and then the next day he hates me. It's just I expect it, so it's not like I don't hate John. I don't have ill will towards John. I wish him the best. I really, honestly do. Um, but anytime he threatened me to a fight, Phil, I always said, look, I'm 15 years younger than you. This is something I do every day. I was brought up doing this. You are a lot older. You've had strokes, and you've probably never been in a real fight in your life. You, the thing that happened with him and Cabby was the worst thing that could ever happen to someone like John, because he thinks that since he beat up a guy that is a lot bigger than him, and by the way, I wouldn't say beat up. that was like, I mean, who watching that fight, I can't tell you who won. It was they both come at each other and then they hug and then they have to be pulled apart. There was no winner there. No one beat up anybody. But to put that in his head now that he has said, "I'm a trained boxer," if he ever pulled that with anybody, Phil, that took a kickboxing class at the local YMCA, the guy could be in serious trouble. As a
Yeah,
friend, do I take him into the gym and just, "Hey, let's go 30 seconds?" I mean, wha
I I don't think he'd ever get to that point because I think I'd like to hope that he's just blustering, that he's just hoping that he can talk big and it'll never come up. I don't know to what degree he actually believes what he's saying, but this is a guy who's in extremely poor health, and you can say, "Well, I've been fighting my whole life." That's fine, but you're at the latter part of it, man. Like when you get to 60, you've got what, 20 years left?
that if you're
You know,
lucky.
so I just I think there's internet drama and there's making fun of people, and then there's, hey, this might actually kill you, so
Right,
don't
that's
do
what
it.
I'm saying. That's what I keep saying. Phil, I keep saying, like, "No, nobody's gonna fight you. I refuse. I'm not gonna have any part of this. I'm an old man. You're older than me." Um, you try this with anybody. I mean, I I do care about the guy. I don't want anything bad to happen, but to carry that way of thinking into your life, and I know he hangs out at pubs. I'm surprised that he hasn't gotten to like a bar fight yet and
I
been really
I
hurt.
actually am very surprised by that because to read between we only know what he tells us. We don't know any outside information about what he does at these pubs, except for
Right.
that one sound clip of him screaming that somebody had parked behind him. Um, but like when Chad Zumock showed up with a black eye and lied about it repeatedly, I think the actual story boiled down to he ran his mouth and somebody punched him. And Chad's young enough that getting punched in the eye, getting a black eye, not a big deal.
Yeah.
But I'm genuinely surprised that
Me too.
John's overbearing behavior hasn't caused somebody with less impulse control than you might prefer to take a shot at him.
I know. Well, I mean, the guy, if say what you want, but he could be one of the luckiest men I've ever met in my life.
Yeah, he's had a lot of
Good
luck in
for him.
life.
Good for him.
It's gotten him where he is today. Although, like, I think he's on the downslope. The peak of
Yeah.
his career was getting that job with the Tonight Show, and I
Yeah.
think it's been downhill ever since.
Yeah. And Phil, can you imagine what it must be like for, like, say, a supermodel in her 20s, 30s, and even 40s, her around her 50s or 60s, just remembering um, that I was who I was because of the way I looked. That's
Well,
got to be
yeah,
a tough place
that's
to
even
be.
harder. That's harder than whatever's going on with John because
Yeah.
it's not tied purely to something that you age out of. Like
Yeah.
I would think it must be tremendously difficult to be a model and then to just age out of it because time kept going.
Right.
No
You
matter
didn't do
what you
anything. It
do,
wasn't
you
your
can't.
fault. Yeah. It was just
Yeah,
nature.
you know, Hollywood is immensely cruel to young women in that you're the flavor of the month for this brief window of time, and then after that, unless you're doing Lifetime movies, nobody's calling.
Cool. Hey, this is one of my buddies right here. This is funeral director. This guy works his ass off. He's a funeral director, and he's a hustler, man. He delivers pizzas after that, and the guy is constantly working, and just a real good guy. Please add a phone line. Actually, hey Phil, if you don't mind, maybe you can read funeral director. Can you see him?
Please add a phone line. It says it'll make the show fast, more engaged, and you'd also have more control over communications than just super chats alone. 143. I don't know what 143 means.
I just learned 143 means I love you.
Well,
It's the one is I. It's one character, and then the
like
four.
on a keypad, the letters on a keypad.
Yes, you got it, buddy. All right. Hey, funeral director,
All
thank
right.
you so much, man. Always nice to see you, buddy. Mr. Phil?
Isn't that when you lose all viewers? I'm not sure what that refers to.
Short Fridays. I don't understand what you're saying, and thank you.
Well, it probably made sense at the time the comment was made, but we've moved on since then.
Yeah. We tend to. Hey, Gonzo wants to know. You're the man, Casey. Phil is great. Yes, I know that. At explaining stuttering John logic. See, Gonzo's not the only one that sees the brilliance that I do, Mister Phil.
Well, I think you're giving me credit for skills I don't have, but I try.
You're a very humble guy. That's rare. It's like you're the
Well,
opposite.
I have the internet to thank for keeping me humble, because just when you start to feel like I might be kind of good at this, someone's like, "You're a fat child molester, you piece of shit." You know, that's the internet for you.
I got you, buddy. I'm with you. You want to take Ben E. Loco?
Truth is, John is not a naturally funny guy. He's only funny when he doesn't mean to be or when everyone goofs on him. Love Phil, great guest. I feel like it's very self-serving of me to read complimentary things about myself.
Well, you
but-
didn't know what it was. It was, it just popped up, and I didn't know what it was going to say either. I don't read them first, and sometimes that gets me in trouble.
Well, thank you, Benny.
Okay. I did read that first, and I'm glad I did. We don't need any of that, buddy. Here we go. No, I just read the first. Phil, deep thinker. He think time for his fifth sandwich. All right, that's good natured.
I don't know who does the Sato Me super chats, but I've been seeing these all week long, and they're always funny. And I appreciate a good Karate Kid Part 2 reference. So how do you begrudge that?
Is that like the person?
The icon is the female lead from Karate Kid 2.
Was that the one Peter Cetera sang that awful song?
I believe it is. Yeah, I am a man who will fight for your honor. That one. That's that movie. Yep.
Okay. All right. Cool. Guys, thanks. So Phil, did the MMA? What type of writing did you do for excuse me, for MMA? Where did you start?
Well, I didn't do MMA writing. I did martial arts journalism, where I talked about mostly traditional martial arts and sort of martial arts politics and stuff. What I learned was never, ever do that. Because writing articles about martial artists is a great way to make lifelong enemies. One of them, in fact, is a guy who has just recently gotten out of prison after spending 5 years in there on a firearms charge. And he went right back to talking about what a jerk he thinks I am, and how I'm part of the vast conspiracy to stop him from being successful. And this guy has been on the internet talking about what an asshole Phil Elmore is for years, literally years. And it all started when I wrote an article about his claims, because I went through this period of time where I'm like, I'm going to do muckraking journalism. I'm going to expose the truth. And that guy's lying about his credentials. I did an article about Frank Dukes, the guy that the movie Bloodsport was supposedly based on. And Frank Dukes phoned me to threaten to sue me. In my defense, I don't think Frank Dukes has ever had a phone conversation with anyone that he did not threaten to sue. So I'm not special in that regard. But this guy in particular, claimed a lot of things about himself. I pulled a Freedom of Information Act request for his military records. I wrote an article about it. And as you can imagine, it did not go over well with him. So he's been complaining about me ever since. And at some point, I'm like, I'm not doing this type of writing anymore. I'm tired of adding new lifelong enemies to my list. And it still happens in martial arts circles, even though I try to prevent it from happening, because sometimes they just find you by accident, or they get mad at you because you're friends with somebody they don't like.
Wow.
Like you're close associates with this person, and that guy made me mad, so now I'm going to try and destroy you.
So you're in a community of stuttering Johns.
Pretty much. The martial arts community online is full of broken people who never grew up. I've said this before in other podcasts. Forgive me if I'm telling you, if you're listening, if I'm telling this story for the fifth or sixth time. I call it the Dungeons and Dragons principle. When Dungeons and Dragons got popular in the 70s and 80s, they used to say that your kid is going to lose all contact with reality because of Dungeons and Dragons. So don't play Dungeons and Dragons because it'll warp your sense of reality. And Tom Hanks did an after-school special called Mazes and Monsters, which was about a kid who loses contact with reality because he's playing this Mazes and Monsters, wink, game. We don't want to get sued, so we can't use Dungeons and Dragons. And the movie ends with him like living in a sanitarium because he's had a complete break with reality and he stabbed a homeless guy that he thought was a monster. And his friends are like, we'll play mazes and monsters with him one last sad time as he's living here at the sanitarium. It's a delight of a movie. It's got Christopher Makepeace in it, who you may remember from the 1980s. But anyway, if it isn't that Dungeons and Dragons will separate your child from reality, it's that people who are inclined to separate from reality are drawn to the fantasy of Dungeons and Dragons. And it isn't that martial arts will turn you into a broken person who's chasing a power fantasy. It's that broken people chasing power fantasies gravitate towards the martial arts. So the martial arts community is full of these broken people who get deeply outraged when you challenge their delusional architecture and go, I think you might be lying about that. Well, how dare you? I will destroy you. We will fight. I had one guy who I'm pretty sure I helped chase him off the internet entirely back in the early 2000s. He ran this outfit that was devoted to knife training and knife self-defense.
Oh, no.
And he put out this terrible VHS video that said a lot of things in it that simply were not true. And I did a review of that and made fun of it. And he got so mad that, I'm not making this up, he challenged me to a knife sharpening contest to prove he was right. And I'm like, that's like two race car drivers challenging each other to change the tires on the car to see who's faster. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
I was going to ask if you could show us your stab wound.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Phil, you brought up something I think should be a real thing. I think that there should be some sort of mental test that you have to pass before you can go into any dojo or
No,
anything like
I
that.
wouldn't go that far. I don't like to gatekeep the martial arts, because if you can control things that way, you can constrain it in ways that are unintended. I think as long as teachers are responsible and they go, I think that student might be a little nuts, and they don't teach that guy.
Okay.
I think that's really the way to control that. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, lots of weirdos get through. And sometimes you'll have a guy perfectly nice when he's in class, perfectly nice when he's going about his life. You look at his Facebook feed, you don't see anything weird until you get to the part where he challenged Phil Elmore to a duel because he woke up one day and didn't like a YouTube video that I made. That actually happened to me. I made a YouTube video and this guy challenged me to duel him.
Was he involved in Monsters and Mayhem or
No? He's apparently he's an airsoft guy. He does Brazilian jiu-jitsu. He's into Satanism, and he's also into historical European martial arts.
Oh,
which
someone
is
I want to introduce my sister to.
So he I don't know how long this guy spent rolling up his character when he invented his personality, but he checked a lot of boxes. That's an awful lot of boxes.
Yeah.
So as you can imagine, I did not say, yes, by all means, I should risk my life and fight somebody who woke up today hating me, who has all this going on in his life.
Phil, come on, I think you're being oversensitive here. It might be a friendly competition. Come on, man.
Well, it stopped being potentially friendly when he's like, if you don't want to fight me with your fists, we could always use swords. I'm like,
oh, God.
Wait right here. I'm going to go get help.
Yeah, I need to tell someone about this. But Phil, what I'm saying is, and I'm sure you've been in the rooms. That one person who's coming in there. I understand if like a kid's getting picked on or something like that, but if the kid gets confident and knows how to defend himself, that's going to be enough for him. He doesn't have to go back. And if he is of sound mind, he doesn't have to hurt anybody. He just knows how to protect himself. But the people that go in there looking to learn stuff so they can go out and hurt people.
Yeah, it's the same logic that people will criticize folks who teach like escape and evasion courses where they teach you how to get out of handcuffs, or they teach knife stuff. These people get criticized all the time as, well, you're just training people to be criminals and you're training them how to do dangerous stuff. And if a criminal took your course, then, you'd be making him more dangerous. It's like, well, you could say that of anything. I mean, terrorists took flight classes. They learned how to pilot planes, and we saw where that got us, but that doesn't mean that we should be not teaching people how to fly planes. Like, it's kind of a necessary thing. So it's not wrong to teach these skills. Yes, at any time, a bad person could avail themselves of this training, but bad people generally don't. They generally don't invest time and effort in getting detailed skill level upgrades to how they do what they do. They learn what they do by doing it, by actually assaulting people, and then they just keep on doing what works.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
You know, I
Yeah.
mean, in some ways, a criminal is the most dangerous person you're ever going to meet, because unlike everybody who's training for self-defense, he just goes out and assaults people, and he's like, "Well, that worked last time. Let's do it again."
Right, right. No, you're right on. And I'm sure that you've come across, many people that are experts and terrific at any type of any discipline in the combat sport. And I bet you'll agree with me that those people are not looking for fights, and they'll do everything they can not to go out and fight people.
Yeah, there are so many people talking so much smack in that universe that I actually wrote an entire book about it. I wrote a book about all the stupid things that people say about self-defense. It's this book. It's called "People Who Carry Tactical Pens Can't Fight," and other dumb things that people say about self-defense.
Love it.
And
Where
yeah,
can we get it, Phil?
Amazon. It's on Amazon.
Okay. What are the books that people pick up of yours? Because I'm gonna see what you got on there. I'm gonna pick up a couple.
Well, I got a bunch of books on Amazon. I do some political books too. Like I just published this book, Honk Honk Clown World Banana Republic Coping Strategies. And that's for people who are just depressed about the state of politics in the world and would like to know how to continue living a good life despite all the craziness that's going on out
Okay.
there.
We need something like that.
The irony is, though, like when I first published my first martial arts book, I thought, okay, I'm going to get famous I'm going to be cool martial arts guy, and I'm going to publish it. I am a best-selling author because I wrote a book about CPAP machines. That CPAP book is my
You
best-selling
you
book.
expected that, I'm sure.
Well, life is not without a sense of irony.
Wow.
You
Man.
can almost hear me signing the contract with Satan. Like, Lord Satan, I wish to be successful. Very well, but it will be for CPAP machines.
Was this might be a dumb question, but was there any I usually ask the authors, like, usually through the process, the author is trying to teach or show or to talk about something, but the author is the one that actually learns something about themselves. Uh, in a book like this, is there anything that you learned about Phil Elmore in a
Yeah,
CPAP?
I think whenever you're forced to crystallize your thoughts, it's kind of a chicken and egg thing. Like, which came first? Did I learn about myself and then put it on paper, or was I putting it on paper and I learned things? So in the case of like the CPAP book, I had an experience where I had to adjust to using a CPAP machine because I have obstructive sleep apnea and I stop breathing in my sleep about once per minute, and
Wow,
that will
holy
kill
shit.
you. And it isn't. I know it's easy to say, well, just lose weight, you fat loser, and you won't have sleep apnea.
Not true.
Actually, there are plenty of thin people who suffer from the same thing. When I did my sleep study, nobody else was fat like me. They were all a bunch of regular, normal sized people. And the doctor told me, I said, look, if I lose like 100 pounds, could I walk my way out of this? He said, probably not, because this is really a function of your airway.
Yeah.
So it got so bad that I fell asleep in the middle of my own sentence once. I was talking to a friend of mine and he said, "Did you just fall asleep?" I'm like,
Holy
"What?"
shit.
Yeah,
Wow.
because when you're suffering from sleep apnea and your organs are damaged by this. So when you don't breathe properly, there isn't enough oxygen in your body. That injures your organs. So in my case, I was having heart trouble that was caused by the obstructive sleep apnea, they think.
Because you
So
probably got no sleep at night at all. You probably got 30
well,
seconds here and there.
you could actually you sleep for like 15 hours and you wake up feeling like you didn't sleep at all because you're not really resting.
Wow.
So the doctor told me that my heart was compensating because it wasn't pushing enough blood. So your heart rate goes up. So when your resting heart rate is like 130, it makes you a little irritable.
Hmm.
So the first thing
That's
they did when they discovered all this, like they're like, okay, we're going to give you a CPAP machine, and the first time you sleep with that, it's amazing because suddenly you're sleeping for the first time.
oh,
But
wow.
they also put me on medication to make it easier for my heart to recover, which they think it has, but it's kind of a running target because you're like, well, is your heart better now because of the medicine, or is the medicine no longer a factor? We're not really sure.
Mhm.
So they do. There's a lot of ongoing examining of my heart to see like, what do we do next? But
Yeah.
when they put me on the medication and suddenly my heart wasn't racing all the time, I wasn't irritable anymore. So I remember I sat down at my desk one day and I was like, what's different? Oh, I don't hate everyone. And then I was like, oh, I have been a giant asshole to everybody for like 18 months. So I had a lot of apologies to make. Yeah, it was amazing. So, and then like when you first start sleeping and you're actually getting, the CPAP machine mouth rapes you with a column of air. It forces you to breathe by holding your airway open with constant pressure.
That's the writer in
And
there. Very descriptive.
well, as a result, you actually breathe and it stops you from snoring too, which is a nice side benefit if there's anyone in the room who might be
Right.
affected by
Right.
you snoring.
Yeah.
So, once I finally started resting, there was a period of time where I would sleep for 5 hours and wake up completely refreshed, because when your brain hasn't been getting that signal that says I'm done sleeping, and suddenly it starts getting that signal that you got rest, it triggers it early. So for about 3 weeks, I was the most productive I've ever been because I was sleeping for 5 hours and waking up ready to go. And it's evened out now.
You discovered Adderall or something.
Yeah. So I sleep like a normal person now,
Wow.
but
Phil, what was
it's
the
my life.
first?
And
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
well, the reason I wrote the point I've made in this very circuitous route, I wrote the CPAP book because there were things I wished somebody had told me before I tried to adjust, because it's very hard to get used to sleeping with a CPAP mask if you've never done it. And there was a time when like I hadn't slept for 3 days. The mask was stopping me from sleeping at all. I felt like the joy of sleep had been taken from me. I went into the sleep clinic and I was so unhinged that the lady in the office next door fled, and I had to apologize to her because I walked in there and I'm like, if you don't figure out why I can't sleep with this thing, I will jump off a building.
Yeah.
And they're like, bless his heart, the guy was like, okay, let's see if we can make some adjustments, because he just took it all in stride.
Wow.
And so they there was things that for one thing, like the CPAP mask, if you have that air pushing when you try to sleep, it feels like trying to breathe through a scuba mask. So what they do is they turn the pressure down and they time the ramping up of the air pressure so that hopefully you're asleep by the time it's at full force, which can help you fall asleep and get used to it. And there's different types of masks. You can have a full face mask, or you can have just a nose mask, things like that. So once they got that all adjusted, I was fine. But I'm like, somebody should have told me these things. So I sat down and I wrote the book. And it's just, it was just a little 99-cent ebook. It's not long. I put it up on Amazon and it ran away because there are so many people who have this problem. I never even knew. I had no idea that I was tapping into a potential marketplace. So to this day, that is my best-selling book to this day. It's got like 500 organic reviews on it.
Wow.
It's just a successful book. Now, because it's very inexpensive, it's not like I made a fortune off of it, but it's the thing that made me a successful author. So, how do you get mad at that?
How many people do you think their lives were changed by this 99-cent book? I mean, that's worth more.
I'd like to think it helps. Yeah, that's why I wrote it. My father was alive at the time and had been arguing with me about whether he needed to get a CPAP or a BiPAP, which is a different type of CPAP machine. And I wrote that book to convince him to do the sleep study, because I was thinking about him when I wrote it. I'm like, this is why these things are bad. And eventually he ended up with an oxygen concentrating machine, a device that fed oxygen to him at night. And it doesn't need tanks. I think it gathers the oxygen from the air somehow. I don't know. But anyway.
Well, Phil,
so
can I be the first to encourage you to write a follow-up, which is entitled, I'm tired of looking like the cover of Black Sabbath's Never Say Die? I don't know if you ever seen.
I'm sorry.
There's a picture of fighter pilots on Black Sabbath Never Say Die in 1978's release. I thought most people would get that reference. Struck out. It happens, bud.
Well, what's funny is sometimes I'll be watching like I think it was one of the Star Wars series, one of the new ones on Disney Plus. They had like a mask, a breathing mask, and it was very clearly a CPAP mask that they had repurposed for the the costume department. And I'm like, hey, I've got one of those.
Cool, man. All right, well, that's pretty awesome. At first, when you told me that, I was like, well, that's that. I want to hear that the story, but I assume that that was such an important book that you never thought would turn out to be like that. And I can't imagine how many people you've helped. So that's pretty awesome in my book.
It seems like the things that you think aren't important are the ones that are most successful, and the things that you think will hit big tend not to. When I was writing columns for WorldNet Daily, I worked for 8 years for a company called WorldNet Daily, which is like an arch conservative website, news and commentary site. And I wrote an article that was a throwaway. When you have to write a column every week, sometimes you're just phoning it in, like, oh crap, I got to do my column for this week. So I wrote a column about the fact that no, fluoride is not like a Nazi era brain softening chemical, because there's people out there who get really excitable about the topic of fluoride in the water.
Okay.
So my column was nominally a technology column. So I wrote a column about stop being afraid of fluoride, you sissies. It's not that big a deal. And that column, of everything I ever wrote for WorldNet Daily, is the thing that got the most mail, because I had no idea how passionate people are about their hatred of fluoride. Alex Jones' website put up an article that was addressed to me, Phil Elmore, by name. And it was something like a response to Phil Elmore, who thinks fluoride is good for you. I'm only sad that Alex Jones himself didn't write it. But yeah, I never had any idea that that was going to be such a big deal.
Wow. Hey, guys, I'm speaking with the great Phil Elmore. A guy is so interesting. I could spend so much time with him. But Phil, a lot of the people that watch this channel are into nonsense. So I got to give them a little nonsense. It's just something like this. When that the big lion escaped.
Thank you very much.
Scott, that is live in Hernando, Mississippi, where there's been sightings of a cougar, and that's not it. That looks like a house cat.
A house cat.
A local man rolled his cell phone video on what
Look at him.
Is a cougar. Right back with a live report.
Yeah. So that's just a house cat, Phil.
Well, you never know. They can be dangerous.
Yeah. Oh, good point, Phil. High school wrestling is something that kids can learn a lot from, or they can goof around. There was one time where I still don't understand how this happened, Phil, but there were two kids from opposite teams, and usually if you meet up with a teammate, if you're in a tournament, you goof around because you wrestle in the room all the time. But I don't understand how these two, it's 15 seconds, how this happened, Phil.
These two high school students actually got disqualified for doing this.
No chi blasting your opponent in this tournament, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how that happened. Like, if my old man was my coach, and if anybody ever did anything like that, oh God, that would.
I could see yelling at them, but I can't see disqualifying them. They're just being silly.
Right, but they were from different teams. I don't know, like maybe it was a small area and they knew each other or something like that. But that's kind of weird. All right, let's carry on. I'm showing Mr. Phil that we do some nonsense here at the end of our show, because I've kept them for a long time, and I know you guys love them. There's so many different things I'd like to show them, but the one that I'm going to save Bukowski for the end because he's a writer, but I am going to show him someone that I'm sure he knows and is. Do you know Boss Rudin?
Yeah.
Have you ever seen the video he put out about self-defense?
I've seen lots of clips of Boss Rudin, because when I was working for the internet marketer I mentioned, one of my jobs was to take clips from his vast library of stuff he had permission to use and put up those clips on his website as like the self-defense tip of the week. So I've seen lots and lots of clips of stuff like that. So yeah, I believe I have seen some of the self-defense stuff that he put out.
That's pretty awesome. Well, he was a beast. He made am I saying it right? Pancration?
Yes.
Pancration. Can you explain to the listeners what that is, if you know?
I want to say it's like Greek wrestling.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I thought it might have been before before the UFC and stuff like that. You couldn't punch, but you could use open hand slaps and basically a lot of grappling. Pretty much MMA, no punching, but with open hand slaps. And he was a beast. He was the one that kind of made it a household name. But why we love him, Phil, is because he put out probably one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life. He's talking about what to do if someone attacks you in a bar. So let me share that with you. Guys, Phil Elmore is hanging out with us, and I'm showing my new friend, Boss Rutan.
Let me tell you first that I've been around. I've been a bouncer for many, many years. Bang, bang, bang. It's
Bang,
a street fight. Never look away from your opponent. Look, sir, I really don't want anything of this. And I go, whoop, like this, and I slit your throat, and it's over and out. Everybody underestimates the kick in the groin. Boom, that's the first thing to do. I follow up, bang, bang, bang. Right away after that, dang. See what I'm doing? Boom, that's the left elbow right there. I can also deliver, bang, headbutt out of nothing. Boom, right elbow, bang, right straight. Maybe now the headbutt comes. Knee to the face. And look what we got here. Smack his face. Smack his face, create distance, and grab a chair. You can slam it into his face, you can stab with it, and while I throw it at him, I will kick him in the groin, boom, right straight. Gonna bounce his head on the table 10 times or something. Don't you ever do this. Right away you say, okay, I'm sorry. Bang, 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 no I'm not. And he comes in, boom, front kick, boom. Boom! Simultaneously, the elbow in the head, grab his wrist, grab your own wrist, and bend his arm. I control him, you see? Knee in the head, I can bounce him against the wall, everything I want to do. We grab, but just to make sure, we grab this arm also. Now we're in total control. He tried to kill me, so I gotta return him the favor. I step underneath here, and now I'm controlling him with my head, and I can stab his own knife here in the liver. Stab in the liver.
With his own knife.
Watch. I'm grabbing the inside of his hand
I have
like
a feeling
this.
One,
end up
with him getting
support
bounced on
his
the table.
elbow. I can, of course, kick him in the head. I really want to be. I can put my knee on and break the arm.
Oh, God.
Never, ever let him take that choke. Because if you're out, God knows what they're going to do with you. He's choking me and he's going to lift me up. I'm loose. Okay. One. Kick to the knees. Or maybe
his head against the
heel to the balls. Heel to the balls. And I can lean forward, and go back with a headbutt to the head.
Out of nothing.
Kick to the leg.
Yeah.
Heel to the groin. All the way go like this and come back with a headbutt to the side.
Bang, bang.
Somebody's telling me that about my wife. I'm sorry, sir, but I'm going to break your leg. I grab his toes, and then I'm going to go like that. This knee will be shattered. You get your arm, you break the kick, bang, right straight. Or he grabs it again, go out, bang, left straight.
Bang.
Pushing down as hard as I can. I make a turn, and you see I got the arm bar on him. Boom, kick in the groin, bang, right straight.
Bang,
Wrong move.
Bang.
Don't do that to El Guapo.
Bing, bang.
Block, wrap, boom, strike, boom, elbow. Once he's down, boom, knee to the head. I'm grabbing his arm. It's full power. I hit his wrist. This is a wrist lock right here. I pull it. Ow, ow, ow. Bang, bang, bang. And you know these people that are talking to you. Something's going to go wrong. And you want to choke the guy out. Support his arm so you can go underneath his armpit like this, and I step in. I grab
sorry,
and
sir.
I squeeze everything together and watch. He will tap.
Oh, that takes me back. I have pulled so many clips of that guy.
Really?
Oh, yeah. There was him and another one that I used to. One of the clips that I remember pulling was from Dan Severn. he was doing some kind of technique that he called the windshield wiper in that clip. And I just remember thinking that Dan Severn's voice was very incongruous with Dan Severn's physical presentation. Like Boss Rutan sounds like Boss Rutan would look,
Yeah.
but with Dan Severn, it's like, okay, now we're going to do this.
Oh, I didn't know that he had.
Yeah.
Like, that's funny, man.
He's
I mean,
kind of like a big MMA Freddie Mercury.
but it's so funny when if you just pick up the things that he says. I don't think he's trying to be funny. Like he says, someone's telling me about my wife, and you have to.
No, I think he's got a good sense of humor. I think he's aware that he's being lighthearted about
You think
it.
he's trying to be funny about?
Well, I don't think he's trying real hard, but I think he strikes me as a naturally humorful guy. You know, a very jolly fellow. I think he's just engaging that way.
Did you enjoy that?
I did.
Okay, I thought you would. That's why I wanted to play it. Don't you ever do it.
I like at the end of that where he's essentially applying a rear naked choke to the front of the guy's face. Now I'm going to do it from the front. Up yours.
Well, I mean, the stabbing the person with a chair. I mean, that's something you should learn in the first day of any class. To stab. Phil, I have enjoyed our conversation. I hope you will come back. And people love you here. I got nothing. Usually people are just really, really mean. But you had a couple more. And then I'm going to end with a writer's perspective of living with a woman. But actually, I should probably, that's a long conversation. Charles Bukowski and his wife at the time are having a conversation. But it's a long conversation. I'll save that. I'll just play some nonsense. But let's go to David Skywalker, if you wouldn't mind, Mr. Phil.
I don't know who Pat Dixon is. Should I?
I believe, I've never met him. I believe Pat Dixon is a comedian who was on the Shuley Network, and I believe is on Kevin Brenner. Do you know Kevin Brenner?
Brennan. Well, I'm aware of Kevin Brennan's show, but I don't believe I've ever interacted with Pat Dixon at all. Maybe I said something that he disagreed with. It's going to be my guess. As far as I know, we've never interacted directly, unless I misremember.
All right, David Skywalker. Well, thanks for your question, and thanks for the generous gift. But he doesn't know. So I don't know if you're trying to start something.
I mean, there's a lot about me that I imagine someone could take issue with, but in this case, I'm unaware of the specific complaint Mr. Dixon has.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. You got tea like to let him, my friend?
What's your take on Shuley buying views? I think the whole he buys views thing is silly. I did a whole video about why I think it's silly. I don't think Shuley was buying views. I don't think Chris Abels was buying views. If Chris Abels' former partner was buying views, I don't think Mr. Abels knew about it. They all seem like nice people, and I enjoy their shows. But at the end of the day, if this is the big drama in your life, if this is the hill you want to die on, they were buying it. How is your life affected in any way, positively or negatively? It's not.
Yeah.
So I think the whole thing is very silly. I think it's a lot of people engaging in performative outrage so that they can point and scream and act like, something horrible has happened. Like, let's say everybody was buying views. Nothing has changed.
Right.
It's like that old joke, Magic Genie, please do this thing. Very well. Nothing's changed. Correct. Nothing has changed. It was always like that. And you just place the political statement you want to make in that joke.
Got you. And I think I saw that piece. I thought it was really, really well done. And there's not many people that I will watch them do a video. I'm talking about yourself here, where I get so into it, I scroll down to see how much is left because I don't want you to end. That means you got me.
Most people can't wait for me to shut up.
Well, I'm the opposite. I love what you have to say. I think you're very bright and you got a great take on things. You're definitely very witty, buddy, and I'm a big fan.
Thank you.
So in that piece, where you were talking about how the business model wouldn't work about people buying views because you would lose money probably doing it. But in this Yeah, in this whole universe, I think it relies on people who it's like the bigger dick thing. It's like everyone has a pissing
True. The only convincing argument, well, sort of convincing argument you can make is that it's the perception of success. So if
Yes.
you're arguing, well, they falsely created the perception of success, and let's say that the algorithm is not affected, because I don't think we're talking about an amount that affects the algorithm in any way. But people were affected by thinking this show is successful and therefore I should like it. But does any of us watch a show simply because we think other people watch a show? Like, you might look once, but if you didn't like it, the perception of success isn't going to cause you to keep watching the show, or more importantly, to give money to the show in the form of super chats.
Yeah.
So at best, it's the most superficial of superficial bumps. If we say everybody was doing it and they bought it to the tune of thousands, and like one guy was like, I think Phil Elmore's buying views too. And I'm like, if I was buying views, I think I'd have some. Like
Yeah.
my good videos have 2,000 views on them now, thanks to this past week's PR push.
Yeah, I mean, how fast did that happen?
Number. Like that's a tiny number compared to people who are successful on YouTube.
Wow. I see you having many more of those videos. I mean, to get that 2001, is that your highest one? Do you look at the analytics?
I think I haven't before, because they were so low that it didn't matter.
Okay.
I started looking at them in the last couple of days, and 2,000 something is the most views any of my videos had, I think, unless I'm forgetting something.
Mm-hmm.
So
how long did it take you to get that?
Well, I started the channel about a year ago. Mm-hmm. So for most of the last year, no one watched. 20, 60 views was normal for me. And I had, like, until this past week, I had maybe 250 subscribers, maybe.
Wow. So everybody, you got to subscribe to Phil. We want him to get up there, because you've been blowing up past.
Well, it's over 1,000 now, and that's amazing. I mean, I'm so grateful.
Awesome.
But it's weird, because before, when I did a video, I knew no one was listening, and now, like, there's actually people who subscribe to hear what I'm going to say, and it's like, wow, I better not screw this up.
Well, guys, I've been speaking with my new friend. This is Phil Elmore. Phil, please tell us where we can get a hold of you, where we can subscribe and be a part of your world. Please let me give you the last word here.
At Surviving the News on YouTube is the channel where I do the Dabbleverse commentaries and anything that's relevant to what we're doing here. I have another channel where I host the martial arts podcast with Phil Elmore. You can find that. It's there to be found. And on Amazon, I have a bunch of books. So if you buy some, I'd be really grateful.
Please, let's all go do that. And we didn't even get into it, Phil. I'd love to have you back, man, because I assume you follow the UFC.
Casually, like, sometimes I'm more excited about it than others. Like, I got to see live the match where Ronda Rousey lost for the first time, and that was very exciting.
Oh, but it's by from Vegas, the blonde Holly Holm.
Yeah, she got she wasn't even looking at her when she got kicked in the neck, and I remember thinking when it happened, I'm like, wow, I just got to witness a first.
Yeah.
So, but I'm not like, I don't follow it really closely. Like, I just here and there.
I got you. Well, what I want to leave you with is, and remind me, I got to turn the sound down, because I play a lot of clips, and usually I just end up giving all of it away to the first person that complains to YouTube because there's a song that's played. The bots will take it right away. So I don't care. I'm trying to build it up like you are, and trying to show people good stuff. And sometimes that comes with the territory. But there's a guy I'm sure that and if you don't, you're gonna love it, because you're into combat sports. There was a guy that lost one match, not Dan Gable. I'm talking about Alexander Karelin, the Experiment. Have you ever heard of this Russian wrestler?
I don't think I have.
Oh, awesome. I can't wait to share this with you. This guy specialized in freestyle and Greco-Roman wrestling, right? This is, for people out there who don't know anything about wrestling, this is not the fake stuff. This is not WWE. This is like the real athletes. They called this man the Experiment. He was 250 pounds, and his move that he perfected was a reverse gut wrench. Now, a gut wrench, and in freestyle wrestling, what you're trying to do is you're trying to roll your opponent over, so his shoulders go across the mat, and that's 2 points. All right. If both shoulders land flush on the mat, doesn't matter for how long. That's a touch fall. The main way to score points from the top is something called a gut wrench, where both of your hands are going to be clasped underneath the guy's stomach, and you're going to try and roll the guy over. Now, the Experiment, as you'll see in a minute, was so strong and such a complete beast. He invented the reverse gut wrench. I can show you on Coach. It's the reverse gut wrench, and he would pick people up, Phil, and he would throw them across the mat. A 250-pound man is throwing people across the mat. I'm not bullshitting you, and I got proof. So I want to show you a little highlight from the person that is called the Experiment, who only lost one match, and I guarantee that's what he thinks about every day. But everybody, check out the Experiment. Got the sound down. Do you think you could just chuck him across the room? Hey,
I should.
Phil,
Wow,
what do you
that's-
think, buddy?
I think that's pretty cool. Do you know, is that guy still alive? Is he still around?
Yeah. That he was popular in the 80s, I believe. Last time.
Neat.
Yeah. I mean, did you ever cover any collegiate wrestling, freestyle or
No.
No.
Nothing like that. I do enjoy the lore of mixed martial arts, though. Like I remember I rented the early UFCs from Blockbuster on VHS
1993.
so I could watch those old UFCs and see the train wreck fights that were before anybody had it figured out.
Yeah, before you could punch the guy in the balls if you wanted to. Yeah,
right. There was no time limits, and like early on, they weren't using gloves. Nobody had any idea. The one match I always remember is this karate dude who fought a sumo guy, and he broke his hand trying to end the fight because he won, but he couldn't make the guy go out. He couldn't knock him out, and there was no like he either had to tap or die. Like there was no time limit, so he's just punching and punching and punching, and finally he broke his hand.
And he had to fight again if he won. He'd have to go fight again.
He was not able to go on. He was supposed to do more fights that same day, but because of the broken hand, he couldn't.
I Phil, I'm bewildered why no one actually died back in those days.
It is a little amazing that everyone survived that early blood sport version of UFC. Wow. And there was the guy, what's the guy's name? that ended up going to prison for rape, and then he killed his cellmate, little
Jesus.
Asian guy. I forget his name now, but he played Random Task in that Austin Powers movie.
Oh, God.
And he was a rapist. So there's an MMA match where his opponent repeatedly punches him in the groin over and over and
you're talking
over.
about?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. I know exactly what
So
you're talking about.
he finally, like, it's kind of like reverse time travel karma, because he was a rapist and then somebody spent an entire match just punching him in the groin. Then he gets arrested, goes to prison for being a rapist, and immediately murders his cellmate.
Oh, geez. The kind of guy you want over for dinner, I assume.
Really, really calm fellow, always keeping to himself, super quiet.
Well, I'm sure he was able to, think these things through his emotions, I'm sure. Phil, you are a great guest, buddy. I'm very gracious that you spent so much time with me. I welcome you back anytime that you want me to bore you again. But you're awesome. One more time, tell everyone where they can get a hold of the great Phil Elmore, guys.
Just Surviving the News on YouTube would be a great start.
All right, Phil, I'm going to go reverse gut wrench coach for you. No, it'll take a while, but everyone, welcome. Say thank you to Coach. My thanks to my guest, Mr. Phil Elmore, and we will. Oh, I didn't do it tonight, but tomorrow we're going to do Crumb Bum of the Month. So if you tuned in for that, we're going to do it tomorrow. We went long, and my guest is just incredible. 2 hours with me. Anybody who does that is a brave soul. Phil, thanks again, buddy, and we will see you guys tomorrow.
Thank you.